Tonight for the highlights we got launch of the regional Holy Quran competition. And on the international scene in Indonesia, missing submarine found with no survivors on board. Those were the major headlines for tonight. Welcome again to our newsroom. The Minister of Muslim Affairs, Culture and Waqfs, Mu'min Hassan Aberi, presided today at the People's Palace the launching ceremony of the regional competition of the Holy Quran, which will be crowned by the head of state prize. The ceremony was attended by the Secretary General of the Ministry, the Director of Muslim Affairs, the Director of Administration and Finance, as well as the members of the jury and all the participants from the countries of the Horn in East Africa. This great regional competition of the Holy Quran in its 21st session is organized under the high patronage of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Mr. Ismail Umar Agelle. It is held every year during the blessed month of Ramadan and thus becoming a patient tradition to motivate young people to recite and learn the Holy Quran. On the other hand, this event contributes to promote the influence of the Republic of Djibouti as a beacon country where tolerance, peace, and stability prevail. After the selection sessions, the jury will choose the best competitors. A total of 30 winners will receive first place prizes. The first three in each category will be the winners of the Head of State's prize.
وتؤمنون بالكتاب كله فمن اضطر غير باغ ولا عاد فلا إثم عليه إن الله غفور رحيم.
During his speech at the opening ceremony, the Minister Mu'min Hassan Beri welcomed the participants from Yemen, Somalia, Kenya, Sudan, Ethiopia, and the Comoros Islands. On the other hand, the minister asked the different participants to chant verses of their choices to highlight the diversity and beauty of Tawjeed and recreation. The participants are selected in three categories, namely reciting the entire Quran, which is 30 chapters, by heart, or memorizing 20 or 10 chapters. At the end of the ceremony, Minister Mu'min Hassan Beri wished all the participants of this session success and achievement. Moving on, the Minister of Energy, Mr. Yunus Ali Gedi, chaired today at the People's Palace a meeting of the Steering Committee of the Sustainable Electrification Project. In the presence of the Minister of Housing, Mrs. Amina Abdi was also present, the General Secretary, Solidarity, Decentralization, Finance, the Director General of Electricity of Djibouti, Mr. Jama Ali Gelle, the Prefect of the City of Djibouti. The objective of this project, financed by the World Bank, is to set up a national sustainable electrification program to support the Djiboutian government's efforts to achieve a 100% electrification rate by 2035. At the end of the project, the expected result is to impact more than 100,000 inhabitants, that is to say the equivalent of 14,000 households, including 5,000 vulnerable households. The Director General of Djibouti's Electricity, Mr. Jama Ali Gelle, stressed the importance of this project. The Minister of Energy, Mr. Yunus Ali Gedi, recalled that access to a stable source of electricity is essential for the development of the country. The rain announced for several days by the weather forecast has finally arrived timidly since yesterday evening and continued this afternoon with a strong probability of precipitation in the evening and in the coming days. These rains have sprinkled the capital, the northern coastal area, and part of the southern regions. This morning, the population of Djibouti went out with their feet in the water in some areas of the capital, but for the moment there is not much damage except in the city with a palm tree blowing by the wind. Has crossed the concrete and iron fins of the mysterious city and fell on a car in the direction of Djibouti Telecom Road. The driver narrowly avoided the tree which fell on the bonnet of his car. The driver was frightened and evacuated to the hospital. For a few hours, the traffic was blocked and quickly cleared by the protection services. Nevertheless, in this period where persistent rainfall is expected, vigilance is still required. Road and sea users should take their precautions before embarking already. The ferry, Mohammed Burhan Qasim, has been cancelled for today due to bad conditions. Already, the Minister of Interior had issued a notice to prepare for all evaluations in the face of these bad weather conditions, which are expected to last for the next few days. Early today, Monday, 26 April 2021, Djiboutians woke up with their feet in the water. Indeed, as it was announced by the National Agency of Meteorology that heavy rains will fall on the entire territory, The elements of UNYAD has been working hard to evacuate rainwater on the arteries of the capital, the various roads, streets, and allies. The agents opened fire buffers on the National Road 1 so that the rainwater could be released. But also and above all, the agents of this institution in charge of the sanitation of our country finalized the rehabilitation of the outlets. The report is that today, the first of a series of 72 hours of rain announced by the weather forecast is less alarming than expected. However, the head of the sanitation department said to remain vigilant, whatever the situation is today. The Ministry of Social Affairs and Solidarity is currently conducting a biometric enrollment and data collection operations among vulnerable households in the main towns in all the interior regions. With the onset of the pandemic, food insecurity has become one of the government's top priorities, as many households in both urban and rural areas have seen their livelihoods' income significantly affected. This will provide a clear picture of their food security situation as well as their livelihoods. In response to this situation, the World Food Program and the Ministry of Social Affairs and Solidarity, with funding from USAID, plan to implement a food assistance project through vouchers for those households most affected by the socio-economic impact of the restrictive measures. The beneficiary households will remember 6,000 in Djibouti City and 16,000 in the interior regions. The activities covered are aimed at meeting the food needs of the population set up by the government to deal with the spread of COVID-19. This program will also contribute to strengthening the local economy linked with other interventions of the Minister of Social Affairs and Solidarity in the World Food Program. Following the example of other countries in the world, the Republic of Djibouti officially launched yesterday morning the commemorative activities of the World Malaria Day under the theme Drawing a Line on Malaria. This day marks the start of a whole week of awareness activities to change the behavior of the population. Malaria is still a real public health problem in the Republic of Djibouti and remains a serious obstacle to the socio-economic development of the country. It is in this sense that the Directorate of Priority Health Programs through the National Malaria Control Program has organized communication activities for behavioral change which play an important role in the fight against malaria in the Republic of Djibouti in a context marked by the COVID-19 pandemic. Following the remarkable increase in the number of cases infected with the COVID-19 in the country, Peltier General Hospital is witnessing a massive influx of people infected with the coronavirus. We follow up more details in the context of the following report. Hospitals are seeing a massive influx of people who have been infected with the coronavirus. This rebound of the endemic is closing up the emergency services, such as that of the General Peltier Hospital, which has set up structures for emergency care, resurrection, and heavy hospitalization. Reserved solely for taking care of COVID-19 patients, the emergency medical structure is composed of dozens of beds, aiming to provide adequate, timely, culturally sensitive, and appropriate first aid to patients with COVID-19. Here we find seriously ill inpatients, most elderly or those with comorbidities, for example, a cardiovascular disease, diabetes mellitus, obesity, pre-existing lung disease, and etc. Medical staff monitor and provide intensive care to relieve their symptoms. Presenting with severe respiratory distress, the majority of these patients also suffer from chronic diseases. The nurses, led by their chief medical officer, immediately provide oxygen therapy and spontaneous ventilation in an attempt to reduce the risk, and immediately provide the necessary supportive care. We interviewed Dr. Warsama Abdi, Chief Medical Officer of the COVID-19 Emergency Unit, who presents this structure and its main missions. This care structure welcomes everyday patients tested positive with respiratory difficulties or with chronic diseases that require intensive care, said the doctor. After the emergency, serious patients are transferred to the COVID-19 resurrection, another health structure that is intended and reserved to give intensive care to seriously ill patients, said Dr. Warsama Abdi. Since the outbreak of the pandemic in March 2020, according to the overall assessment of the Ministry of Health, Djibouti has recorded 136 deaths due to infections with COVID-19. New confirmed cases of coronavirus infections have also been recorded. We went to meet the head of nurse of the COVID-19 resurrection unit, Mr. Isaac Aden, who explained to us the danger he and his team face on a daily basis in the caregiving to seriously ill patients. He also raised the difficulties faced by the families of the COVID-19 patients who always want to stay or see their seriously ill relatives. Said Major Nurse Mr. Isaac Aden, we always have difficulties to explain to the families of the patients who do not always neglect the transmission of the virus. We advise them to respect the barrier gestures, to save themselves and also to save the lives of others, emphasized Mr. Isaac. Many patients recover after intensive care. This infectious disease center is in charge of the follow-up of recovered patients. Dr. Miad Muhammad Nasser, the chief physician of the center, follows with special intention. Hospitalized a few weeks ago, this elderly person was cured of the disease, but still remains in this department where she continues her treatment while being monitored by the doctors. This is a mother aged about 65 years old. She told us how she contracted COVID-19, the breathing difficulties she experienced, and the intensive care that saved her life. Today, she is well, resting, and above all, carries an encouraging message of hope for the elderly and calls on the population to respect the bare gestures and health measures against the pandemic. She is issuing a warning to all those with symptoms to come forward and seek treatment. To face the pandemic, the General Peltier Hospital has multiplied its efforts to protect users with the installation of a disinfection machine and other hygiene measures. A guided visit was also made to the Oxygen Production Center of the Peltier Hospital located at Pica 12. Although the hospital's oxygen consumption during the COVID-19 period increased to several calendars daily, COVID-19 patients wounded respiratory assistants were able to benefit from oxygen. No doubt this oxygen production center was able to fully meet the needs of patients with breathing difficulties. According to specialists, this recently installed center produces hundreds of cylinders per day. The parents Ali Rabi and Mrs. Zainab Farah are actively looking for their son Muhammad Ali Rabi, age 30, living in Balbala, who disappeared on 17 April 2021. He is mentally disturbed. Anyone who recognizes this disturbance is asked to contact the following number: 77 81 85 84. I repeat, 77 81 85 84, or the Central Police Station. Shifting focus towards the internationals, and now Indonesia missing submarine found with no survivors on board. The Indonesian Navy announced yesterday that it had found a submarine that sank off the coast of Bali and confirmed that all 53 members of its crew were dead. The submarine, which had been missing since Wednesday, was found in the subbed of the central Indonesian island, broken into 3 parts. Moving to India, it continues to break records for the number of cases of infection. On Monday, 26 April, the country recorded nearly 353,000 people infected with COVID-19 in just 24 hours. In an attempt to stem the rapid spread of the pandemic, which is partly linked to the emergence of a new variant, the authorities have announced an extension of the lockdown on the capital of New Delhi. The country, with a population of 1.3 billion, is in the grip of frightening outbreak with another 352,991 new cases. That was it for the English edition for tonight, our beloved viewers. Thank you for being with us, and make sure to stick around for the French version up next. Thank you and spend a lovely night.